my name is Efrem Fesaha. I'm the CEO and founder of Boon Boona Coffee, based in Renton, and we've been at this thing now for 10 years.
Oh my gosh.
You know, it's definitely been amplified in the last few years, and a lot of that is just us changing the way we did business and how we engaged. And so, you know, the majority of that time was back end and distribution of coffee, and so green coffee was our primary. And then once we moved from back end to front end into having like a cafe space and a retail space, then, you know, we got to engage with more of our guests, and we got to see, you know, incredible people like yourself, Kia. And honestly, we've been, you know, as a result, like it's not that we stopped doing the things that we were doing, but it just amplified it.
Yeah.
And by having that space, so, but 10-year journey, you know, and it's been incredible. Been grateful for it. Did not anticipate seeing it get to the, you know, this point, but, you know, definitely had some goals and desires of where I wanted it to be, and the fact that, you know, there's so much support, and, you know, we don't take that for granted at all. And you know, the premise and the purpose for what it is that we do, it feels so like true to us.
Yeah.
And we get to wake up every morning and say, you know, what do we want to do, how are we going to engage both in our community and our sourcing practices.
I think it's the same for us, right? It's been a journey, and on that journey there's some ups and downs, but
For sure.
really beautiful moments.
Yeah.
And what you can do, and like you said, we, you know, try our best to figure new things out every day.
Yeah.
But are super grateful for it.
Without a doubt. Yeah.
So why coffee, and what was so important for you to bring East African and African coffee to the community here in Washington?
I grew up similar to most Ethiopians and Eritreans. Like, we grew up in our households in the diaspora, but especially back at home in origin, it's like you grew up with the traditional coffee ceremony. So you have coffee always being roasted in front of you, you know, brewed and consumed not just for like 10 minutes or just like one quick shot of espresso. It's like for hours. You're sitting together with your family, and you're talking, and it's being made multiple times a day. And so you're around coffee since the day you were born.
Wow.
My experience was no different than that of most. And then by the time I got to, you know, probably like my freshman year of college is when I had my first like latte, you know, and the purpose was like to stay up, because I heard, you know, like it would keep you up. But later on, you know, I got out of school. My undergrad was at WSU, and then I got out, and for, you know, pretty much about a good 4 or 5 years, all I was doing was really grinding it through finance and just kind of growing in that space. And then, you know, 2008 financial crisis happened, and, you know, I was fortunate enough to keep a job, but, you know, I was working really hard, and I got burnt out. And by the time, you know, 2010 hit, I was ready to just like say, yo, I'm taking a break.
Yeah.
And I took a break for 6 months, and I started traveling, and I traveled to, you know, quite a few places, but the majority of my time was spent in Eritrea.
Okay.
And in the capital city of Asmara. And Asmara, or Eritrea in itself, was colonized by Italy, and so there's a lot of remnants of that colonial rule.
Okay.
And so because you have both this like traditional side that's happening, and then you have these cafe settings, just the whole vibe was just something different than what I was accustomed to here in Seattle.
Yeah.
So I was like, when I came back, I just said, you know, I want to do something in coffee. And for 2 months, all I did was just work on my financial plan, my business plan about how I wanted to go about it. And, you know, I had that experience of finance, you know, throughout my kind of like, you know, first few years of corporate experience, that it brought me to a place where I could kind of like successfully put that together, but not successfully get the money that I needed from the banks. So the banks were still like, no.
Yeah.
And I said, you know, I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep moving forward with it regardless if I've got the funds or not. And by March of 2012, I incorporated, and I started reaching out to family that I had in Ethiopia to start sourcing small amounts of coffee. And that's where at least like the discovery and exploration into coffee started to happen. And that was, you know, about March or into the summer of 2012. A lot of exploring into coffee started happening for me, and that was the start of it all for me. But, you know, I'm grateful I kind of kept on with that path.
Yeah, it sounds like it's been a journey, right? And like doing something different and paving the way for something that's a little bit unusual for, I mean, our communities here at the time, especially in the industry. And it sounds like you were saying, in comparison to maybe us out of convenience going to get coffee or a shot of an espresso and going, so much of the coffee is part of the culture.
Facts. And I mean, and as I was starting to play with coffee, I mean, a lot of it became, you know, my mom was like, hey, Efrem, like, give me your coffee, like, give me your green coffee. And that green coffee is just that raw product before it's, you know, roasted. And so if we take it back, you know, you've got a red cherry growing on a tree. You pluck it off, you peel it off, and you've got these 2 little green seeds, and that's your green coffee, you know? And then to get to something that's consumable, you would roast it, and then grind it up, and now use it for your espresso machine, you know, French press, so on and so forth. But we would use it for our jebana. And so my mom saw that I had access to this green coffee, and she was like, you know, let me try your stuff. And she loved it. It was much better than the stuff that was available in the East African grocery stores, which would typically be like a Ziploc bag with just the dollar amount for how much it cost for the amount that you're getting. And it was sometimes, you know, just not the quality wasn't there, consistency wasn't there. You didn't know anything about the origin, you didn't know any of that stuff. And so my mom was the first one, and then obviously when she makes coffee, she's making it for her sisters, she's making it for her cousins and the other family members that we got. And so they're like, yo, where do you get your coffee from? And then it's like, oh, Efrem is our plug, basically. and so I became the family plug. And then it became like something where I was like, oh, okay, maybe that's where I need to start at. Like, how about I satisfy first the demand or the need for my own community in which they're trying to get consistency within their green coffee. And so that's where I then focused in on. And by 2016, then we started getting into roasted coffee. And then by 2019, that's when 2018 is when we got to the place where we said, okay, I think we might be ready for the cafe. We still didn't have the money for it, but you know, that was another exercise. And then in January 2019, we opened up our first brick and mortar location, but you know, primarily it was like just you know, providing it to our own community.
Beautiful. I feel like that, you know, is such a big part of the culture of Boom Puna and the cafes anyway, that like lives strong, and you can feel that communal sense in the spaces that you created. But I mean, I can speak for myself. The community, I think, is very happy that it came from green beans to roasted beans, and being able to experience the coffee on a mass level. And we're all so grateful for it. So thank you for that. You touched a bit on the jebana. Can you speak to us a bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. So the jebana is definitely probably one of the oldest forms of coffee brewing, because just to kind of even take it a little step further back, you know, the birthplace of Arabica coffee beans is in Ethiopia. And even the word where we get the word coffee derives from a village in Ethiopia called Kaffa. And so, you know, coffee was being consumed in that region. And then what happened was that it's just kind of a natural evolution of it. You know, obviously it was going to be roasted and chewed on, and then it went into basically a clay pot to brew it in. And the jebana is basically a red or brown or black clay pot, round body, and I wish I had one in here to display except my hands. You can just look up jebana, it's awesome. Jebena. But then it's got a spout as well on it. And so there's 2 different formats for it. One has 1 spout, one has 2 spouts. The 1 spout is kind of like, it's a little risky. It's kind of 1.0 is how I see it. But you know, you would put the coffee grounds in, and then you put the water in and you let it boil. And as it boils, because of poor airflow, it can explode straight out of there. So you got to be very careful with it. The 2.0 has 2, so it allows for a little bit more, a better airflow. But they are made of clay, so they break pretty easily. The jebana is just one part of a few other equipments, a part of the full coffee ceremony. And that coffee ceremony is performed, you know, all throughout different parts of East Africa. But the premise is pretty much the same. You know, you're either using a pan to roast it, or you'll have like a flat slab basically, and you'll use kind of like a long hook, almost like a back scratcher, to move and sway the coffee over this like large surface, depending on how many people you're serving. And then you'll brew it in the jebana. And when it comes to serving it as well, like each tribe has its own traditions associated to it. So some you'll light incense with, some will have it with, I think the majority have it with like some kind of food. So it'll be popcorn, dabo or hambasha, which is bread.
Okay.
They'll have different nuts available as well. Just different little treats, appetizers for the most part, and they're pretty all healthy as well. And that would be supplemented with, their coffee, or that would go with your coffee. And then, in the coffee itself is served in like little 4-ounce cups. And those are referred to as sini or fenajil. And in the sini or fenajil, what you'll have is the coffee will go in, and then you can add sugar. You can, of course, have it black. You can add sugar. You can have salt in it. Ginger can be added. And then there's a tribe in Ethiopia, the Gurage tribe, who will put like a spiced butter inside of it. And so if you're familiar with, like there's some brands that, kind of speak to like having butter in their coffee locally here. And so, that's not a tradition that started here in Washington. It's one that's been going on in Ethiopia for a long time. And so there's these different practices based off of the tribes or regional, but really the premise is the same. When you're having coffee, it's a form of hospitality.
Yes.
So Kia, you come over, I'm going to offer you coffee, and we're going to sit down and we're going to drink coffee together. I'm going to start it from the green side. You're going to see the green coffee. I'm going to roast it for you. You're going to smell it. You're going to evaluate my roasting abilities to make sure I roasted it well.
Okay.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
There's some knowledge built in already with people that are coming to consume and partake in this.
Oh, without a doubt. And I think that, and even if you don't, you're still supposed to jab at the person, you're supposed to make fun of them. Because it is a form of, it's a socializing event, and so it's friends, it's family, so it's the things that we typically do with our loved ones, and so it's all welcomed. And we would just sit over the course of like 3 hours drinking coffee, and that still happens to this day.
Wow.
And it's a big part of our culture, and it's definitely, for me personally, it's something that I find very therapeutic as well too. Like if I'm, if I go home, of course see mom, see family. But then when she's like, let's have coffee, or do you want coffee? I'm like, yes. And it's like you sit down in a comfortable place. It smells that you're familiar with. It's just a conversation that you enjoy having with someone, and it always reminds me of childhood and just great times.
Yeah. Is this, I guess, an activity or like the art of making coffee a daily practice, or is it more traditionally held for ceremonies or celebrations, or just any time really?
That's a great question. No, I mean that's the thing about it. Like, we have it all the time.
Yeah.
All the time. Like, you can't have it too early and you can't have it too late.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's no wrong time to have it. Typically, you have it with at least one other person. And if you're making it for yourself, you're making it for yourself. It's okay. There's no problem with that. But usually it's an opportunity to invite somebody, be like, come and have coffee with me.
Okay.
It's also something that you would do for guests as, like I said, a form of hospitality. So you would try catering that to that person that's coming over. And let's say, for example, okay, you come in and I'm roasting it. We're drinking our first cup, and then somebody else comes in like about a few minutes later, and they're like, oh, you guys are drinking coffee? Like, yeah, don't worry, we'll set you up for a new one.
Okay.
So you'll actually go back and you'll roast new coffee.
Oh, wow.
For that guest, grind it and brew it. Now, unless that person's like, hey, don't worry about it, like I'll just jump in where Kia's at, we'll get it, but a form of hospitality is at least offer.
Okay.
You at least offer it. You'd be like, let me do it all over again for you. And it's not like, oh, I'm going to have to do it. No, it's like, no, I'm going to do it for you. And there are days where I've seen my mom honestly make it like about 5 to 6 times. And that's for like each round of guests throughout the day.
Yes.
There's also no wrong time, like the circumstances. So like, let's say it's a celebration, a wedding or whatever it is, just a gathering, a holiday. It's going to be made then. Okay. Or it's a time of mourning. Even in a time of mourning, the coffee ceremony is going to happen. And really, it kind of goes back to that, like, the conversation that you're going to have around the coffee, and to help the mourner in their difficult time as well, and whether it's talking about that loved one that passed away or just other things as well. It's to kind of have that conversation around it, and that coffee kind of helps introduce it. And so I mean, I've had it at 3 a.m. I've had it at 6. I've had it at 3 p.m. It doesn't matter.
Yes.
Yeah, it's no problem.
That's beautiful. It's really amazing to me how food and beverages can really bring us together, but also reflect the culture so much. And I know for us here at like jcoco, at least, chocolate is so communal. Yeah. Like we want to break chocolate at the table. We want to have a conversation. We want to share it with loved ones. So to hear the threads and connections between the two is really beautiful. And I think as humans, we want to relate and connect, especially to others. And what better way, like you're saying, to show love in the act or service of, let me create this for you or give this to you, or let's break chocolate. Let's have a cup of coffee together.
Couldn't be said more eloquently. Couldn't be said more eloquently. Yeah, Kia, you always do it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What is it, kind of based upon that conversation too, that you shared, that you hope the community or somebody that walks into one of the cafes or has the coffee at home or orders it online, what do you hope that they experience when they drink it or when they walk in and have an interaction?
For the cafe experience, objective has always been to provide that kind of similar, like, welcoming experience. And I also think that providing the atmosphere for it happens through different ways. It's by having events inside the space that reflect that, whether it is food pop-ups, chocolate pop-ups, or even having like the library there, or blood drives, or COVID testing, whatever it is that is useful and that is positive, that is good for the community inside of a space, to try providing that poetry, live music, things that are warm and welcoming, is the atmosphere that we're trying to produce. And then with our coffee also, like, there's a sense of, where does it come from, why this coffee, how was it handled, and then also the spotlight on those that produced it.
Yes.
I think that, acknowledging where it comes from is the first step, but then also saying, understanding other aspects, especially when it comes to a continent like Africa. I think that, speaking on, the other beauties of Africa is something that we're trying to also kind of bring out. So often, when I hear someone saying they're going back to Africa, it's like, oh, I'm going on a safari. Well, there's a lot of other things besides animals there. There's people, and there's a lot of good being done there. And so it's to say, okay, here goes these producers, here goes these farmers, here goes this coffee, and who made it, and so that level of spotlighting is important. Also, to once again to kind of control that narrative that coffee didn't come out of Italy or anywhere else, that it does come out of Africa. I think that is also something that we're trying to convey through our our work through coffee, and we're just one avenue, is just one, and that's coffee, right? But you're doing it through chocolate. And to think about the other things that we consume or wear, to have that kind of level of understanding and knowledge, I think is just powerful. I believe that the more knowledgeable the consumer is, the better off everyone is. And so to have a deeper appreciation for the things that we've got, and then also to know that things were handled well on its way to you. I think that's fun. That's great. Like, that's the desire. So that's what we hope to convey. And then as just fellow humans walking this planet, trying to do some good as well. Like, that's also a motivator for sure. I'll be honest. I can wake up and say, okay, hey, what are we doing today? Oh, we're doing coffee, but we're also going to be doing this and that, and we're going to be trying to do this, and we're collaborating with jcoco for this and that. Okay, like, I'm so happy with that. That's a beautiful place to be, and that's the hope.
Yeah.
That's the goal. That's what we strive for.
I mean, we're striving for the same thing, right? And I think that there's so much power in small choices. And so the level we talk about care, and I think that's a thread that's been running through this conversation.
Yeah.
There's so much care in the work that you're doing and where you're sourcing, you know, coffee from.
Yeah.
The same with us, with cacao and chocolate.
Yeah.
And those small decisions make such a big difference for us, for the people that produce the product, for the world around us, and making that impact. So we love to celebrate that, and we're happy that, you know, you're celebrating that as well.
Of course.